So now that we've finished with the structure of position papers, let's talk about writing style and knowing our audience so we can build the position paper in the best way to achieve our respective goals depending on who's reading it. So with position papers, there are three types of position papers to write regarding audience. One is writing for no one, and yes, this is actually a thing. The second is writing for the chair, and the third is writing a position paper for other delegates to read as well. So let's start with the first one, writing for no one, which is a real category. Happily or sadly, that's up to you. Some position papers will not be read by anyone, and they're simply there to have a box to tick for you to be able to win a diplomacy award or a best delegate or an honorable mention. Some conferences will actually admit this, but many will not. So you need to sometimes extrapolate for yourself whether the conference is actually going to be checking the position papers. A few hints is one, where chairs are not required to send feedback, or where the position paper deadline is so close to the conference that there's no reasonable way someone will be able to read it. In such cases, we would recommend to still take advantage of the benefits of the position paper to organize your thoughts and sort them in your own mind, but keep in mind that a poor document can just as easily qualify when you're writing for no one. Then there's writing for the chair, which is the standard position paper that most of us know. When the chair is required to send feedback, and this means they usually will have read the position paper. Not always, but most of the time. In these cases, it's an excellent opportunity to introduce your country and also describe your policies to the chair before the committee sessions start. This is a place to bring facts and ideas that you want the chair to know that either you won't have time to fit into your speech or you're afraid the chair may lose focus. Sometimes chairs will talk to each other, fix software, drink water, and it might happen during your speech. When you can flag these ideas to your chair in your position paper first, it's also more likely the chair will hear them in your speech and understand what you're trying to do as the round progresses. So when you know your chair is going to read it, you can sometimes allow for a slightly more complex idea in your speeches, knowing the chair will already be aware of it and you have more time to persuade the delegates. Because during committee session, you can convince the delegates, but the chair will only hear your speeches, and unless they're standing next to you during the time you're writing or lobbying during an unmoderated caucus, you really don't know what they're going to see. So if you can put that in their minds first, it's definitely going to help you. Now, writing for other delegates, which is the third type of position paper audience, divides into two types of papers. One of them is where all delegates can access them, and only the delegates will read them. This is one of the cases where all the delegates can see the position papers, but the date to give them in is the night before the conference, so your chairs will definitely not take the time to look at them most likely, especially when you're a committee of 200, 300 people. And secondly is where the delegates will read them and the chair will give feedback, meaning that your position paper will need to make sure that the chair sees what they need to, and also the other delegates. Let's talk about these two types. So when writing for other delegates, when only delegates read them, and the chairs probably don't, you still want to use the platform in some ways similarly to what you would for the chair. You want to put ideas into people's mind and focus where the discussion should be. The position paper in these cases, where only the other delegates read them, should be written to frame the issue, sometimes more than giving concrete, detailed policies, because you want the other countries to see a possible way to view the world, which, if they agree with your problem and they agree with your, first paragraph, then they will agree with your solution that's supposed to solve that problem. This is especially valuable for delegates who did less research or didn't find a position for their country. They may choose to adopt your view or at least be familiar with it when they hear it in a speech. So for the more experienced delegates, they're going to have some kind of idea of what they're contending with and see you as an ally or an opponent. But delegates who didn't prepare may adopt what you're saying as correct and decide that that is what they want to do. A position paper, however, where the chair and the delegates both read them, are the most complex position papers to write, because if only the chair was reading the position paper, you'd be able to write things without any fear of other delegates taking preemptive action or possibly borrowing from your ideas. And when it's just for delegates without the chairs, you can write things in a way which can sometimes try to either throw them off or give them specific ideas that you want them to focus on. But here you need to achieve the chair goal and the delegate goal. The position paper is mostly a paper which is there to flag ideas, nothing too concrete if you're afraid that someone is going to get inspired by it. But you would want to flag things that you would say in speeches, which people will then be able to go, I heard that, and it will echo it in their mind rather than hearing it for the first time. So in these cases, the ideal would be to write a paper where the chair will see what they want and the delegates will see what they're supposed to see. If you feel that you're not able to balance between the two, it's better to err on the side of what the delegates will see and hope that the chair will be able to see between the lines rather than writing for the chair and then other delegates getting facts and detailed plans that you may not want to show to the room of 200 before you go. Of course, with position papers, they need to be written on case-by-case basis and tailored both to the size of the room and the level. You would write a very different paper if you're an advanced delegate in a room of beginner and advanced mixed, rather than what you would do for a Security Council of 15 very advanced delegates. You don't want to give the full details of your policy. Someone may steal or counter it. And it's better to focus on developing your first paragraph and your view of the world. In advanced rooms, oftentimes delegates will be arguing for how the world works. For example, you'll have very different policy if the world is one where terror is in very few places and very rare, versus the world is a powder keg and it could blow at any second if we don't possibly decide to start listening and eavesdropping on the population, for example. For gigantic rooms, at the same time, you would usually want to develop paragraph 3 so others can know your idea, and even if you don't get to speak for the first 2 hours. Obviously, this is something on a case-by-case basis, because sometimes people will see a good idea and decide that they like it. But if that is not the case, and you feel you're going to be talking to 100 people, and you know that some of them will read the paper and say, yeah, I'm the one who had the idea with, let's say, fining large corporations, and I gave the specific detail of working with public sector companies. You read that? Great. Let's work together. So now that we have done that, gone over the various types of audiences, we're going to move on to the solid benefits that you can get from a position